Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Grid Shift Podcast, the show where we talk to real operators, high-level entrepreneurs who are actually building in the renewable energy sector, having a real impact on infrastructure. As everybody knows, all of our listeners, new listeners, we have real conversations about what's working, what's changing, where the grid is heading next. I'm your host, Alex Girante. Quick word from our sponsor, Access AI. We're brought to you by Access AI. We help manufacturing, renewable energy companies, and really any company help scale revenue and implement AI in a practical way in a landscape where AI is a little bit scary. So, shout out to our sponsor, Access AI. Today, my guest is Francis Michael Volcan. He goes by Michael. He is a partner at City Renewables. They serve homeowners and businesses across the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. Michael cut his teeth doing door-to-door sales. He's a high-level entrepreneur, big go-getter, and more recently, he joined City Renewables, and he's driving a lot of their growth, helping businesses and homeowners with their renewable energy needs. He is in Washington, if I remember correctly, Michael. But welcome back, Michael. If you want, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm in Washington, D.C. We service D.C., Maryland, and Virginia businesses and homeowners. We help them go solar. That's basically what we're doing.
Yeah, there's one thing I want to bring up while we're recording here. And in the prep call, you had mentioned, you had said something along the lines of what you guys do. It's an interesting industry, and it's not a lot of people right now are focused on the big beautiful bill and the impact that it's having. But you said something that I found more interesting. What I think a lot of people need to hear is the space does have a lot of bad actors, right? And we talked about that on the pre-podcast call, and that stuck with me. And I've been looking forward to unpacking that part specifically. So I'm just curious, when you mentioned those bad actors, because depending on who you talk to, renewable energy can kind of be a touchy-feely type subject. So I'm just curious, when you mentioned bad actors, what did you really mean by that?
Yeah, bad actors, I would say, solar is extremely data driven. When you're proposing a solar system to a homeowner, the most important thing to look at, it's almost like going to the doctor. You go to the doctor, you get a checkup, you get your blood work done. In some cases, you get an X-ray, but it's really just what's happening is a lot of these bad actors, what they're doing or what they've done is they don't look at the data. They don't look at what's good for the customer. For businesses, it's a little bit different since there's like a board and it's a little bit harder to kind of like screw a business over. But when it comes to an actual customer or homeowner who's looking, the main reason why people go solar is they want to save money on their utility bill. So, when a lot of these homeowners don't have any insight, they don't know anything about solar, they they wouldn't even know where to begin, right? So we're the professionals, we come into the home and we propose this solution for them to save money. So what's happening is these bad actors, they bypass the data. They in some cases they actually see the data, they see what's possible or what's not possible for the homeowner, and they just don't care. So the first thing we look at is when we're proposing a solar solution for a homeowner is their utility bill. Their utility bill is almost like going to the doctor, getting your checkup done. That basically tells the story of the home and what's going on in the home and how the electricity is used. And that allows us to create a system which in turn will help offset that usage by a certain amount, right? And the goal for me, at least, like for my clients, is I want to be able to offset, the usage by at least 90 to 100%. And the reason for this is because if I can have the homeowner pay 90 to 100% of their current utility bill at a lesser rate than what they're paying the utility company, then it makes all the sense in the world. But a lot of these bad actors, what they do is they, let's say you get a utility bill and the house is surrounded by trees and the homeowner has a situation where they're using 10,000 kilowatt hours in the year, but the system can only produce 2,000 kilowatt hours in the year. This is only a 20% offset. So only 20%, let's say you max out the system. It's a super inefficient system. You max out the system, you max out the roof, and it's only producing 2,000 kilowatt hours for the year. That the homeowner is still left with 8,000 kilowatt hours, which is being pulled from the utility company. And at that point, they're left with two bills, which, in some cases, that 20% that the bad actors pricing is usually more or just around what the customer is paying now for that 80%. So now the customer's stuck with two bills. They're having a bad experience. They're saying, hey, I thought 100% of my bill is going to be covered. And that's not the case. So that's what's happening, especially with elderly people, people that are not able to protect themselves. And that's what's happening. And that's what's causing the solar industry to not only have a bad reputation, but a lot of people are having bad experiences, and you see them all over the Facebook groups. Don't go solar, but when in fact there actually is a solution if it makes sense for your home.
Yeah. No, and I want to dig into that a little bit because you explained to me what makes City Renewables different, and especially your approach. You have an extensive background in sales and really consultative sales, helping with custom solutions, whether it was when you were doing the stuff with smart homes or when you were doing the stuff with security systems. So kind of walk me through what's the differentiator with City Renewables? Why is it that people have a preference to work with you guys? I've seen a lot of case studies, a lot of things on your guys' website that show why you guys are different. But in your own words, what makes City Renewables the right place to work with when you're going after a project like this?
I think with City Renewables, Ben is our CEO, Benjamin Colbert, and part of the reason why I chose to work with Ben is really just because he's all about the customer experience, and his business before I came in was just super referral based. Like customers were, had a good experience with Ben, and that allowed more customers to come in and feel, in some cases customers don't read the contract. They just sign because they know that, Ben and City Renewables, they're really out to make sure the customer has the best experience. So that was one of the reasons why. But I would say what we do differently is like I said, it's all about the data. Like if the customer sends in their utility bill, we take our time with it. We tell the customer, give us 24 to 48 hours to really look at this data. We ask them the right questions. We ask them questions about, what are the plans for the next 25 years in this home? Do you plan on adding a pool? Do you plan on buying an electric vehicle? Do you plan, are your kids leaving for college? So we try to figure out everything going on in that home to tailor a solution that'll work best for the customer. And we just really pay attention to the data, and we also don't inflate the price. So we don't, in some cases, especially these bigger companies, there's a lot of mouths to feed. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. So it's a little bit different when you're working with a local company that does exactly what these other big companies do. And it's really just, the less people are involved in the transaction, in the project, the more flexibility there is in the pricing. So we're able to price the system where it's fair for the customer, and we're still making, a decent amount to keep the business going. And the other thing that we offer, which is not offered by these larger companies, is in DC and parts of Maryland, there is an option for homeowners to go solar for free. So they can actually get the solar system at no cost. And essentially what it is, it's called a 0 cent PPA. So we have that relationship with the financer that is able to purchase the system and lease it at no cost to the homeowner. And that's basically what we offer as well. It's a unique offering in our market. So we do both. So we're able to either give the customer a solution where they're paying outside of the areas that we can offer free solar, or we're able to give them a free solar system if they qualify, if their area qualifies. But it's all in the data. And even with the free solar system, we set the expectation like, hey, with the solar system, it's okay. Like you're not paying anything. The finance company doesn't have a utility bill, so they're not really offsetting anything. They just need the system to be efficient, at a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning if it's 10 kilowatt system, it needs to produce a minimum of 10,000 kilowatt hours for the year, for it to obviously like work well. And yeah, so we still set the expectation like, hey, you're using 20,000 kilowatt hours, but we can only fit 10,000 kilowatt hours worth of electricity. So half of your bill will be covered unless the habits of the home change. So yeah, we still, it's all about the expectation. And the most important thing is we actually walk away from deals that we don't feel will benefit the customer. So sometimes it's better to just walk away, and let the customer go out. We advise them. We say, hey, listen, like we advise you to maybe go get another quote from another company. But we just won't do it because we don't think it's the right thing to do for your home.
Right. Right. No, and you would explain that to me. So I'm curious more on the free solar model because we talked a little bit about that. And, for someone like me who isn't 100% familiar with how that would help my business or my home, like walk me through a little bit more in detail on the free solar model. Like who's actually paying for that system? How does it work? Who would you say is like the ideal client to go after for something like that? I just want to know a little bit more about the free solar model that you guys have that unique offering for.
Yeah. So yeah, and the way free solar works is in Washington, D.C., actually in the Northeast, there's something called the Solar Renewable Energy Certificate, the SREC. So a lot of people know about it. If you're in solar, you know about the SREC. Now, in Washington, D.C., the SREC is the highest in the nation. It's at currently it's $375 per 1,000 kilowatt hours that the system is producing. And what the SREC is the utility company is being fined by local government for not producing enough clean energy. So they have this clean energy requirement. They call it this clean energy market requirement that they need to meet by a certain timeline. So in DC, the timeline is until 2041, where the market cap, and you can look this up, you can Google it, DC SREC. One of the links will probably be from Expansion or SREC Trade. You can look that up and it'll show you the chart and the timeline and the market cap. So the market cap by 2041 is expected to trade above $300. So this means for every 1,000 kilowatt hours that the system produces, the homeowner or the owner of this utility of this solar system is getting paid $300, direct deposit into their bank account. So, for instance, you have a 10 kilowatt system, it's producing 10,000 kilowatt hours. You have that gives you 10 RECs, and you multiply that by 300, that's $3,000 for the year, right? So basically, the way it works is, the utility company is being fined, by local government for not producing enough clean energy. So rather than pay the fine, what they do is there's this system that's created, the REC system, where they're able to pay homeowners to help them satisfy and meet this clean energy requirement. So rather than pay the fine, they're paying homeowners and businesses that have solar power to help them meet this clean energy requirement.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. So what these financiers in DC and parts of Maryland that are in the DC power grid, they call it the feeder zone. What they found is, hey, we can actually give this, because we're doing the system at cost. We can offer the system to the homeowner at no cost. And then we can recoup on our investment for the next 18 years, assuming the SREC is still around. We can recoup off that investment, over the next 18 years, and their return on their investment is, between like 2 to 3 years. After that, it's just cash flow because they don't have a utility bill. And what they're really more attracted to is they have this tax appetite where they're still able to tap into the corporate tax credit, the financer, not the homeowner, because after the big beautiful bill, that's gone for the homeowner. But corporations and financiers can still tap into this tax credit, which, they have this tax appetite. So in volume, you could imagine, what's going on. And then obviously with this SREC, so their incentive is really just that long-term SREC passive income, which is somewhat guaranteed. I would say it's a little bit more guaranteed than a homeowner defaulting on their loan, and then the tax credit. So that's basically what's why they're able to do the free solar. Yeah.
Okay. And so that makes me think like what specifically for whether it's a house or a building or the property itself, like what has to be true about that property for this model to actually make sense for them? Like is it roof space? Is it sun exposure? Like what really is the driver behind this model actually making sense for a certain customer?
Yeah, good question. So the first thing we look at is the efficiency of the system. So the system needs to produce at least it needs to be at a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning if it's a 10 kilowatt system, it needs to produce a minimum of 10,000 kilowatt hours for the year. That's when we know the system is efficient and it makes sense for the property. Because what happens is if it's a 10 kilowatt system and it's producing 8,000 kilowatt hours for the year, the financer is getting paid off of an 8 kilowatt system. So it basically what's happening is they're purchasing at they're doing a job at a they're paying for a 10 kilowatt system but getting 8 kilowatt production, so it's not efficient. There's no return on the investment, so it's not profitable. So what needs to happen is, number one, it needs to be efficient at a 1-to-1 ratio minimum, and it needs to have a good roof. So the roof needs to be in good shape, because they do warranty the roof, so it can't be a roof more than 8 years old. And if it is, it just needs to be in good shape. So we do a site survey, search familiar site surveys, to make sure that the roof is in good shape. And then obviously the sun hours are strong. And at that point, if all those boxes check off, then we're good to go.
Okay. So that's where the data part becomes so critical for you guys and why you look at that data. So when you're looking at that data, like what does that actually look like in practice? Like what boxes are you trying to check before you're even, because you just said, you're like, I'm not going to quote a system that doesn't make sense for the buyer. So that data-driven approach, what does that actually look like in practice? Like what boxes are you looking to check when you're evaluating if it's a good system for somebody?
Yeah, the first thing we do is we ask for the utility bill. If they're a new homeowner, we ask them a few questions. We do this thing called a load calculator. So we're able to kind of like guesstimate what they're going to use in the house, and kind of just give them an idea. And we always like to, it's it, that's a little bit trickier. But we ask questions like, hey, is it electric heat, gas heat? How many people live in the home? Do you plan to add an electric vehicle? Do you plan to add a pool? So basically, all these questions give us an idea of what the homeowner might consume in the house. So, we set that expectation with them, but we always create a system where if they do have a utility bill, if it's a new homeowner with no data, that it's not more than $20-$30 extra a month, because it's better to pay the utility company $20-$30 than pay an extra $100 on your solar system, right? But those things, and then the second, obviously, if it's not a new homeowner, we look at the utility bill, we look at the kilowatt hour. So every single utility bill has this graph that basically tells you how many kilowatt hours for the year, every single month that the customer is using in the house. So this could be, from their TVs, from, their electric stove, their washing machines, their utilities. It's just basically it tells us the number that we need to target to create a system to be able to offset that usage. So we look at that, and then we look at the cost of, what it costs to do the project for the homeowner, and if it's cheaper than what they're currently, paying the utility company. So the ideal situation, if a customer is paying for the system, is right now I have a customer, they're leasing the system, which I think leasing the system is 100% the way to go. Right now, it's a 20 kilowatt system. It's producing 26,000 kilowatt hours for the year. So this means this customer is getting a 20 kilowatt system. They're basically getting 26,000 kilowatt hours worth of electricity for the cost of a 20 kilowatt system. So it's a highly efficient system. So this means they're getting a large system for the price of a smaller one. So we're able to offset 100% of their utility bill. And what they're paying now to lease the system is $266 a month versus what they're paying um, excuse me, versus what they are paying the utility company, which is over $350, $400 a month average. So that's when you know it works, based off the utility bill, based off of, you know, they call it the irradiance, like basically the sun hours, how strong the sun hours are, and then what you can price it at, versus what the utility company is charging.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the way you guys do it, I think that's where you're you're doing it differently than the bad actors you talked about. I've met people who have had that experience you talked about where they felt taken advantage of, but being that you guys are using the data to actually drive the decision, I think that's a key piece that differentiates City Renewables and how you guys do it versus, some of these other guys who are just trying to make a buck. So shifting gears, because I do like to talk a little bit about operations and systems and just business growth in general. We have a lot of listeners that are entrepreneurs, founders, own their own businesses and things of that nature. And we were on I can't remember, you're in your car, we were talking, and you had mentioned that you guys are working on some stuff internally to become more of like a one-stop shop, right? You were talking about some developments you guys are doing on your website, some automations you're working on. So I'm just curious, what is it that you guys are doing at City Renewables, and what are some of those systems and operations things that you guys are focused on to make yourselves better?
Yeah. So Ben is really like he wants to change the way people look at solar, and the way people transact and get solar. So he's creating a system where, the customer can go from a lead to a system design to a quote, all in one, all basically, like the customer can say, "Hey, okay, I'm in," they see, they receive this ad that says, "Hey, go solar." Customer can put in their information, put in their address. The design comes back based off the data they provide, goes straight to their email, and they can decide and pick what option works best for them, all the way to contract to install. So it's basically what we're trying to create is a system where we just get the order and then we just progress the account, and everything just basically is automated. So that's what I can't say too much about it. I don't know how to say it without like I think saying too much about it, I don't know, might get me in trouble, but yeah, no, that's basically what he's doing.
You guys are taking the white glove approach, right? You're making it a seamless integration from interest all the way to actually having the system, whether it's being able to get an automated quote, build the system, see all that. So sounds like that stuff's in the works and in the background now. That's being built now. When do you guys have a timeline for when you plan on launching something like that? I know those builds sometimes can be a little bit difficult, but I think that's really the model, right? When you make the customer experience, that white glove feeling. So when do you guys plan on launching that?
Yeah, I think so. What's really cool is actually yesterday, Ben sent me a text and he said that we're testing it out. So I think I would say um end of the year it should be live. Like we have some beta, we have like a little beta version. So leads come in, but there's still like some tweaking that needs to be done. But ideally, I mean, you're an AI, so it's like ideally it's just having it automated. Like someone can get their solar system the same way they can buy something off of Amazon,
Right.
and trust that
Right.
system. And I think it's 100% possible. I think the real work after the customer signs the contract, because explaining it is easy, and I think that you could have a little video pop up and explain how solar works. The customer can understand how solar works. They can have this little questionnaire, um, which tailors their system, designs the system, and it's really just the progression of the account to install that really takes time, because you're speaking to utility companies, you're speaking to the county for the permits. So those things I think is really just like what's really important. Getting the customer is the easy part. It's just the management and progression of that account to install that's the hard part. So if
Okay.
that order could be fulfilled and we just do the back end stuff and manage that, just please like manage that account, send them updates, then I think I believe that's the future of solar.
Right. You just said something that made my ears ring, and I know a lot of business owners that I work with, right? Lead generation is something that a lot of companies struggle with, right? They got boots on the ground, pounding on doors, trying to get their name out there. And you just said, getting the customer is the less difficult part, right? And so if you can, like, what is it that you guys do to be able to, whether it's educating people on solar, driving traffic through social media, like, what are those avenues that you guys see the most success with when you are prospecting and trying to get leads?
Yeah, believe it or not, um, it's crazy. Believe it or not, like leads are good. Online leads are good when it's a reputable company. I think, but the challenge with online leads is every time you get an online lead, the customer's shopping around. Like it, because that's it. It's likely that they are. Now, a referral is 100% the best way of generating business. So that comes with the reputation, customers feeling comfortable referring their, if someone's having an issue with, hey, my electric bill's high. Hey, I know this company, they helped me. And it's easy to get a referral. And referrals typically move forward with you 99% of the time. And I would say door to door is the most effective way. And I'll tell you why. If there's two ways. Like if you have an installation happening, I have an installation happening right now, but if you have an installation happening, it's easy to knock the block and say, hey, this is what's happening. I'm not sure if you know your neighbor, but feel free to reach out. Letting that homeowner be kind of like the neighborhood ambassador for your company really makes a difference. And I've tested it with many different neighborhoods, and it 100%. Sometimes you end up getting 7, 8, 9, 10 people in that same neighborhood by just creating that neighborhood ambassador. And a lot of the times these homeowners have like little group me's or, little groups. And they can easily just say, hey, I got my solar done by Michael or, by City Renewables. And it's easy to generate business like that. So I think door to door, as much as it's very, very difficult, I think leads are good if you've established yourself in the market where people can trust you. I think leads are good. And I also think the most effective that I've noticed is if a customer is interested, sending them an email or just saying, hey, I have tons of references, sending them a list of references they can call, speak to, feel comfortable talking to, and get their experience. And most of the time, it all starts with door to door. It's really, really interesting. Door to door and lead generation, if it's a reputable company, mostly just referrals. So in order, I would say door to door, because door to door, once you plant that seed in that neighborhood, installs it's like a show. Like everybody's
Yeah.
looking at it. There's trucks everywhere. It's easy to point it out. The second thing is referrals. Referrals typically come from door to door. You get referrals, and then lead generation comes from you know the reputation you have in the market, your reviews, and yeah, it's pretty much it. That's what I'm noticing. Yeah.
No, yeah, and we talked about bad actors and people being skeptical, about solar and this and that. But then towards the end of our pre-pod conversation, you had also mentioned that you feel like lately the skepticism is actually starting to go down a little bit, regardless of politics and where things are at with, whether it's the big beautiful bill or whatever else the government's doing. Like, what is it specifically that's making you feel that that skepticism of solar is starting to go down, right? Because we did go through a period where everyone was like high alert about solar guys. And so I'm curious what you've been seeing that's making you feel that maybe there's a little bit of a shift in that skepticism.
Yeah, I think what's happening is I'm not I'm not too sure how to answer that question, but I do think that two things are happening. Number one, um, it's becoming harder to just sign a customer up. Like a lot of these contracts, especially with financiers like IGS, Lightreach, it's all customer facing. So like you have to send the customer a contract. They have to read the contract. With IGS, we can't see the contract. Customer sees it. We have to know the contract, like as far as they give us a blank contract that we can read and understand. But everything is customer facing, which I think prevents bad actors from, pulling trigger on homeowner and getting them this agreement for 25 years where they're not benefiting from. So I do think that's one. Number two, I think that people's utility bills are actually going up, and I do believe they will continue to go up. So people are starting to feel the pain of their utility bill going up, especially in this market, and people just want a solution. So most of the time, it's like, hey, they hear someone say, "Hey, I have solar panels," someone that has a good experience, and I'm starting to believe that the ones that have good experiences are referring their friends or family to the company that they went with or decided to go solar with. And because they have a good experience, they trust that, hey, this person will have a good experience as well. And obviously, the way you treat one customer is the way you treat another. So that's why reputation, making sure they have a good experience is important. And it's just a domino effect. So I do think that it's just coming from people's bills being really high, looking for relief, the incentives that are out there with the government in this, in Maryland. There's the Maryland Solar Access Program that gave customers up to $7,500 cash for going solar. That was one thing. So there's a lot of local and state incentives that put customers at ease and incentivize homeowners to go solar. And the other thing is these local and state incentives, if you don't price the system correctly, they have a system where they audit the contract, audit the account. If you don't price it where it's fair for the homeowner, they won't approve the grant. So it kind of creates a system where reps are forced to do it the right way, make sure the customer, it's fair for the customer for them to access this incentive, which in turn helps the rep close the deal. So
Right.
it's almost like this. So I do
It's an
think,
integrity check.
yeah,
It's an integrity check built in, and then that actually gives the industry, something to lean on where if people are skeptical, you can bring that up and say, look, there's, it's built right into it, right? You can't get ripped off, quote unquote, on a system because it has to be approved. So that's interesting. And I see that too. I think people are also realizing, especially with some of the energy crises going on in different parts of the country, you have all this stuff going on with data centers, you got, technology moving so quickly. I think people are starting to realize that having alternatives and having renewable energy is just becoming more important, right? And I've noticed a lot more people are open to looking at different options like what you guys have. And so right now it's DC, Maryland, Virginia. Now, do you guys also service other areas? Do you have expansion plans? Like, what's the next 3 years look like? If you and Ben are just, Ben's the founder, as you said, if you guys are absolutely crushing it, what's kind of your guys' bigger business goals?
yeah, I think solar is very market specific. If you notice, like companies like Sonova was a financer, but they also installed, but they were kind of like nationwide, but they went bankrupt. Freedom went bankrupt. They were nationwide. The only one really standing right now, I would say, is Sunrun. Sunrun is a really, really strong company, and they're getting creative with the way they approach customers and the, products that they offer to remain strong. So I think the companies that will survive are the companies that are in maybe 2 to 3 markets, to because you have to really understand the market. And I do think there are plans to grow, but I truly believe that, our goal is to really just dominate DC, Maryland, and Virginia, because there's so much more to do, and become really the solar company that people trust to go solar with in this market. And at that point, after that, we can kind of decide, hey, maybe let's go into another market. But you really, for it to really work, you need to, number one, understand the utility company, which changes all the time. So if you don't have the resources or even like the funds to like put someone in a market that understands it, or find someone that has experience that does it the right way, you know, to grow and scale, it's really difficult to basically like survive in a market if you don't know the ins and outs. I'll give you an example, not to throw Sunrun under the bus, but Sunrun had no idea that the DC SREC was existent on the Maryland line. There's something called the feeder zone. So we would take deals all the time from Sunrun, um, because of the fact that we're like, hey, Sunrun didn't tell you that you actually get the DC SREC. No, they didn't. Well, yeah, we can help you get that. So it's like, but you see, Sunrun's like this big company, $3 billion. They're worth $3 billion, and it's like, how did they not know that? You know what I mean? So it's like, but luckily, like, they're in markets like California. They're in markets that, you have like 4 to 10 day installs. So they're doing really well. But I would say it's so market specific that, yeah, the plans are to grow, but it's really important to just establish yourself in the market. I don't know how long that takes, but I guess, yeah, I guess the plans are to grow, but I would say mostly in DC, Maryland, Virginia, and then see what happens from there.
So really grow in that market, become the number one company that everybody thinks of when they think of solar, and just really, I mean, you already said it, dominate where you're at and continue to grow that footprint with Virginia, DC, Maryland. And I mean, what would you say is the biggest thing that stands between you guys and getting to that goal? Is it a knowledge gap, an education gap? Like where do you feel that challenge is from taking you to where you guys are at today to the ideal state that you just described?
Yeah, I think it's just number one, the market here. I think it's just understanding, because there's so many utility companies. It's really just number one. Pepco is a utility company that takes forever to be able to allow you to install customer. The approvals, the interconnection approvals. It's just really just I think this market, there's not a lot of installers. There's not a lot, but the ones that are here, like, they're starting to basically understand the market better. And we learn new things every day. So I do think it's education, like learning new things every day. And it's always changing. So it's always like these financiers are always changing, like what they allow, what they don't allow. These installers are changing, like what adders they're going to put on or what adders they're not going to put on. So it's like constantly changing. So I do think yeah, I do think it's education and experience to be able to get us where we want to be.
Now, in a second, I want to make sure everybody gets the City Renewables website, gets the links to your LinkedIn page. They can connect with Ben, make sure they follow you guys on socials. We'll put all that in the description below the episode. But before we get into that, I do want to ask you, Michael, specifically, right? You've been in this game a while. When you and I talked, one thing we aligned on was just like I don't want to use the word, grinding mentality, but that, because a lot of people don't like that, but you're a go-getter, man, right? And I could tell that from the first time we talked. And so I want to know, for some of our young listeners that are out there, maybe they're having a tough day, they're trying to generate sales, they're trying to do better for their company. What are the things that throughout your career, what do you think are give me a couple, like what are the core things that you think have really helped you to get to the level of success that you're at now, whether it's, daily disciplines, habits, certain intangible things. I'm just curious, what's helped you be successful, especially in the sales arena, which can be difficult for a lot of people?
Yeah, it's really hard. Like it's sales is not easy. Like, and it's crazy because I just think if you're young and you don't, I wish I had gotten into this opportunity before I had kids, because I always think like, damn, if I didn't have kids, I mean, I love my kids, but if I didn't have kids, dude, like I'd probably be doing 10 times more. But I do think that I started in door to door after doing software sales. I worked at a company called Wealth Engine, and we were selling just data to nonprofits and businesses to help them basically reach basically like donors, and that would basically donate to their charitable cause. And it was just a data company, and they were paying me $50,000, no commission. And dude, I didn't really thrive there, but it's crazy. I needed a job after I got fired. I needed a job. So I was like, man, let me just find whatever job. So I found a job at ADT, and they were like, hey, all you have to do is go knock on a door and get a customer to get the security system. And I was like, really? They're like, yeah, we'll give you a list of leads. Turns out the leads they weren't like set leads. They were just like addresses that you could pull up on Redfin. But I remember I almost quit after 2 days. But you know what's crazy? What's crazy is it's just like I think door to door sets you up for business in general, or just like outreach in general, like cold outreach, whether it's on the phone or on the doors, like no matter what it is, like it's just really a numbers game, and it's just really about how long you stay in the arena and how long you know, if you tap out, then you basically miss out on what could have been. So the best example, the best thing I could say is like, dude, if I had quit, I would have never, like, if I had quit the second day that I started door to door, I would have never ever touched a $47,000 weekly check. And it starts small. It starts small like that. Like, and it doesn't have to be small. It doesn't have to be, because you can get into solar now, and you can basically, this is what I would say. Getting into any door to door or sales opportunity is not like, you have to look at it bigger than just like, oh, I'm just in this sales opportunity. You have to look at it as, dude, if I do 50% of this company's volume, then and I decide to leave, then you know the company's going to lose 50% of their production. That's, you can create your value like just from being a salesperson. It's crazy. And different opportunities open up for you as you generate more production, generate more numbers for the company. You get access to different people. People start speaking to you differently. Things start happening differently. So it's just never stopping, not looking at yourself as just like the salesperson. Look at yourself as a partner. Like, hey, dude, like I'm coming in here, like I'm gonna do as much as I can to generate production, generate revenue, and then see where it takes you. Because I can tell you one more thing, like if, especially like door to door, like, knocking a door, you get 10 no's, but then you knock the 11th door and you get a yes. Like if you had never knocked that 11th door, you would have never made $1,000 that day. So it's like you can kind of, it's almost like, you just got to treat it as like this thing where you gotta train yourself to be mentally tough, and also understand that, hey, like if you did it once, you could do it again. If someone did it, you could do it. And there's a lot of opportunity, and you're not just a salesperson. Like you can literally go from a salesperson. Let's say you sell 100 accounts in a year, and you did 100 accounts for a company that does 300 accounts for the entire year, right? You just did like 100, like I don't know what the percentage is, but 1/3 of their production. So it's possible to become more than just a salesperson at an entry level sales position. So yeah, that's what I would say. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
opportunity. Yeah.
Don't never give up, right? Don't
Yeah.
quit. Keep going through it. One thing that I've learned from a lot of high level salespeople, and just from my experience myself, is right. If your goal's big enough, you're going to get really comfortable with being uncomfortable, and
Yeah.
that in itself, right? And when you do it the right way, you build a network of people, you build connections. You're one connection away from the biggest deal of your life, right? So not quitting and having that tenacity to get up every day and creating a goal for yourself and a goal for what am I going to do for this company? How am I going to have that servant like mentality? I love that, man. And before we get in, we have a tradition on the podcast where I ask one last question, which I'll get into a second. But before we do that, for everybody watching and everybody that's going to be watching the recording, cityrenewables.com is the website. You guys can check them out there. A really cool site. They got lots of good information. They also have a live agent who's on there all the time that'll engage with you, that'll walk you through whatever questions you have. On LinkedIn, you can find Michael. I'll put his link in the chat, but he's under Francis Michael Vulcain. We'll put that in the chat. Sorry, in the description of the episode. And then also you can find City Renewables via LinkedIn as well. We'll put all that in the description. Make sure everybody here goes to their channels, follows, sees what they're doing. See if you can get that free energy. Take advantage of it. I don't know about everybody on this call, but I see my utility bill going up every single month. And I think to myself, what can I do? Well, Michael has just shown you with City Renewables. If you're in the DC area, if you're in Maryland, if you're in Virginia, you guys have the opportunity to take advantage of this, and you have a consultative partner that can actually educate you and show you how this whole thing works. It doesn't have to be scary. I think that's the one thing I've really learned today is the way you guys go about it. you know, like you say on your website, fossil fuels are for dinosaurs. Don't be a dinosaur, guys. Go check him out on LinkedIn, connect with Michael, have a conversation. Last question, like I said, tradition on the podcast, we call it the magic wand question. And so here it is, talking about City Renewables. Let me ask you this. If you had a magic wand and you had to fix one thing in your business right now, whether it's something that's slowing you down or holding you guys back, what would that one thing be for the magic wand?
Magic wand, it would be faster installs. Faster installs. Because if we can install faster, I mean, it's all about momentum, and momentum, dude, you're like customers, if they can get man, if that's why in California they're so successful. They install in 4 to 10 days. You could imagine like how and I guess it's just faster installs, faster installs.
Faster installs. Okay. Hey, well, I know we got a lot of general contractors and a lot of people from the trade sector that listen to our podcast. Hey, sounds like Michael just gave you a pretty damn good business idea if you're out on the East Coast in his area. So, Michael, I think this episode was really strong. I appreciate the real insight, not giving me the gobbledygook and the theory and actually just talking candidly to people. I think you did a great job of educating people on what's available. Again, guys, we'll post everything in the description of the episode. Cityrenewables.com. Connect with them, check out their website. And Michael, I really appreciate you coming on, man. Anything else to close us out, feel free. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up here.
No, thank you for having me, Alex.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we'll see you next time for the next episode on the Grid Shift podcast. I'm your host, Alex Girante. As always, sponsored by Access AI. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, everybody.